Greetings and welcome to the Reading Frederick Douglass Together webinar on the application process for 2026. I am Dr. Latoya Bosworth, the Program Officer for Reading Frederick Douglass Together. So just as a reminder, at Mass Humanities, we create opportunities for the people of Massachusetts to improve their lives and build a more equitable Commonwealth through the humanities. We receive major support from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, as well as our generous and private donors. And as a 501c3 nonprofit organizations, we are committed to responsible stewardship of our public and private resources through the guidance of our State Board of Directors and the creative, efficient operations of the staff. The first thing you may notice if you are a returning grantee is that the grant line dates have started later and are ending earlier. And so we are opening grant lines on January 2nd with the first deadline of January 16th and an announcement date of February 2nd. This is ideal for folks who are looking to host a Black History type of reading or event. And no matter when you plan on hosting, you can submit anytime once the grant line opens. So that's another thing to take note of. If you are interested in doing a Juneteenth or July 4th reading, which is one of our most popular times, you can certainly apply as early as January 2nd, but you certainly want to make sure that you do not miss that April 17th final deadline. And the reason for us doing this is a couple of things. One, we want to make sure that we have all of the correct information available so that we may share it with our board, with our staff, and support you with your media and outreach so that we can share it on our social media and let folks know that the event is happening. And also, I would love to attend as your program officer. And so the sooner we have the dates, the sooner we can let other people know. There are also some changes to our funding amounts, and this is definitely an adjustment to our cuts in federal funding, but also in us really hoping that people will engage in deeper discussions, especially in the current political climate. And so, first of all, our applicants can ask for up to $1,000 if you are going to just host a reading only, and you can ask for up to $1,800 if you are going to include some sort of formatted discussion activity as a part of that reading. So it is not required for you to host a discussion or discussion event, but it is highly recommended. A discussion goes beyond, which is one of our norms, right, to open and close with remarks about the speech's historical or contemporary context. What a discussion means is that we have deeper engagement through facilitation of question and response, and that we have supplemental activities possibly. And so these activities can take place before the reading, during the reading, after the reading, either immediately, the day of, or the days following the reading. So this can be a longer activity than a day. Some examples of discussions or supplemental activities include, but are not limited to, the facilitation formats discussed in the Trauma-Informed Discussion Guide. It's a great resource, whether you are a strong facilitator and are familiar with this, or whether you are new to this. It allows you to modify questions. It offers inspiration for them for how to start, how to end it, and different ways in which you can format the discussion. Also, you can consider doing a walking tour of historic sites connected to Douglass or the abolition movements in Massachusetts. Another great resource for that is our interactive map, which highlights and documents places where Douglass spoke at and that are associated with his life. So you can check that out on our website. But that could be a great starting point for a supplemental activity. It could also be a guest panel discussion, and that can include scholars, or it can include a particular demographic of people who are discussing the context and what it means in their lives. Also reading any of Frederick Douglass's narratives or biographies as a book club, or doing any type of hands-on group activities that require the discussion of those themes. For inspiration, I definitely recommend that you reach out to myself if you want to have a discussion about different ways and kind of share ideas. And also feel free to attend our live webinar that's coming up on February 4th. Before you apply, you want to make sure that you're eligible. So first of all, please make sure you're in good standing with Mass Humanities. If you have any type of open grant that is current, such as like your Expanding Massachusetts Stories grant, it's totally fine. You can still apply. However, if you have any outdated Frederick Douglass readings from previous years, you want to make sure that those reports are closed out and finalized. If you are a nonprofit, government organization, state or federally recognized tribe, feel free to apply as well. We do ad hoc groups, but you must have a fiscal sponsor for that as well, and they are going to be the ones to manage the grant funds. Before you apply, here are things you want to have ready to answer on the application. You want to have a date, a time, and a place for your event, the time of day. Also, it's great to have a backup plan, perhaps a rain date, if your event tends to be maybe outside. Also understand how you will incorporate the trauma-informed discussion guide that has been added to the application. Again, you are not required to have a discussion. However, there are elements in that guide that will help you even if you are doing a reading. Consider including a discussion as a part of the reading, though. Have a plan for outreach and publicity. Social media is great, but you also want to have other ways in which you'll get the word out. One way is to let us know what's happening so that we can also share it on our platforms. You want to consider partnerships with other organizations as well. The bigger, the better. And one piece of advice I would offer is to request quotes for your budget items to ensure that you have an accurate budget. If you underspend funds, you'll have to return those underspent funds, and sometimes that can take longer to close out your report. But it's also great use of your money, and if you're able to know exactly how much you're going to spend, so you'll know where to spend it in other places. Be sure that your event is at least 2 to 3 weeks after the award announcement dates. This is important because, again, you want to have time to actually promote the event, and your grant work cannot start until you are approved. So you want to give yourself enough time to promote and share that event. And again, make sure that your organization is in good standing with Mass Humanities. This is a glimpse of what the budget looks like. That has not changed. If you are a project director, absolutely, and you are able to pay yourself, pay yourself. If you are having people who facilitate discussions around that and using that guide, you want to pay them. You can use it to pay volunteers. Some folks use the budget to pay their some readers, especially if people are learning to read or spending a lot of time memorizing particular spaces. Think about things such as like your cleanup, your space rental supplies that you may need for that, whether it be speakers and microphones, which are super important for accessibility. If you intend to do something like have an ASL translator, any other supplies, your supplies must be directly associated with the reading. So that could look like printed copies of the speech, things to write with, Post-its, things that you're going to use for the discussion portion. If you are giving away copies of Frederick Douglass books, you want to maybe use those, purchase the raffle tickets that go with those things. You do have a budget for food and beverage as well, and then publicity and promotion. So consider purchasing social media ads and not just posting them. You want to make sure that it gets out there to other people. Consider putting ads in newspapers and other local places. If you have questions about the budget, as always, I'm here. You want to put in the description. You want to put in what the total cost is and how much is Mass Humanities covering of that. We can cover all of it depending on the amount, or we may only cover a portion of that. Award notification and follow-up. So after you submitted your application and it has been approved, you want to check your spam for notifications. It will send it automatically through the grants management system. So check on it around the announcement dates. You can expect to hear back by the announcement date, but you may also receive an email prior to. You want to sign the grant agreement as soon as possible so that we can start that payment process. If you have bill.com, you can opt to have your check sent electronically. If not, then you can also ask to have your check mailed to you. It can allow up to 3 weeks payments either way. Sometimes it goes really quickly and you can get that payment within 2 weeks. Sometimes it may take 3 weeks or maybe even longer. And then lastly, you want to send the flyer or the event link to the program officer. If you share it with me, again, I can share it with our media and communications person. We can make sure that we are sharing it and putting it out there, and then that we can stay up to date on what's happening to the event and work it within our schedule to make sure that we have somebody there to represent for Mass Humanities, whether it be myself or one of our staff or one of our board members. Change request. If something should change within this application process, you want to complete a change request. So one is if the date changes, right? If the date changes and it's maybe like, you having it, you plan to have it on Tuesday and you're changing it till Saturday, you can just send me an email and I can change that for you. But if you're planning on doing it, that's outside of what you said. So perhaps you planned on doing a Black History event in February, but for whatever reason you decide to do it as a part of Juneteenth, you would need to complete a change request. If you're doing changes in a budget that are greater than $500, you should do a change request and explain why you are creating that change. And then changes outside of budget limits, right? So if you plan on going further, like for instance, we only do $1,000 for things like microphone and sound, but if it ends up being over than what you thought it was going to be, then you want to make sure that you do a change request. A great way to avoid this, though, again, is to get quotes prior to completing the grant application. And then any other significant changes to the event format or logistics, you want to complete a change request. So if you originally were going to do, perhaps you were going to do a discussion, but then you cannot do the discussion, then you would want to do a change request because then we would need to change the funds. And your final report, which is due 60 days after your event grant period and date that you choose. So you want to include audience demographics. So maybe perhaps having somebody with the clicker who is around who can click how many people came in, or a sign-in sheet so that we can look at how many people came. Maybe you can have somebody on your staff who just pays attention to demographics. Are we having mostly a young audience? Is it an older audience? What does that audience look like? The approximate size. You want to look at digital views. Should you create some sort of content? So if you record it and put it on YouTube or anything like that, you want to make sure that you take a look on your final report. How many people took a look at that? Also added new to the final report is going to be a checklist of resources that you use. It's important for us to know what resources did you utilize? Did you utilize the Trauma Informed Guide or the Media Kit or the interactive map or any of our fellowships work? We want to make sure that we're keeping track of who is using what, because we want to make sure that what we put out there is something that is resourceful for folks. Also, in your report, you want to include any links to media coverage that you got, whether it was a newspaper article or something that was shared on the radio. Please let us know so that we can see how many media hits that was happening and we can keep track of that as well. And then any photos or links to photos, we love to reshare your photos. We love to keep them as a part of our archive. And as we look at the evolution of Reading Frederick Douglass program, so you can either email those directly to me or you can send them in the final report as well. As a matter of fact, send them in the final report. And then you want to look at your final budget cost. So with that, you want to go back to your original report. You want to look at that where it says like, this is amount requested for Mass Humanities. Well, if nothing changes, fantastic. If it did change, you want to note those changes and provide a brief explanation. And your final budget cost, again, you want to make sure the amount that you asked for aligns with the amount you spent. If it does not, you would need to return those unused funds. And it's okay if you overspent and you used your own company funds, but we're looking at your spending of the actual grant funds. And then finally, if you have any questions or need any support, I am available via email as well. And then you can also set up a Calendly 15-minute consultation with me, and we can discuss ideas, problems, challenges, any particular specific questions that you have about your event. I am available. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to your application.